Okay, we're going to talk about injectors again, and I'm going to try and not make this boring. Originally, the plan was to use these. These are a Deca core injector. They're off of a Hellcat Red Eye, which is why you see and they're made for Dodge Mopar. These are plenty fine injector to use if you can control dead times and all that, which I don't know that we can actually do with the factory ECU. I'm sure I could just ask the tuner about controlling dead times, injector dead times, and stuff like that. When you control injector dead time, what you are controlling is the time between what it takes the ECU. When the ECU says, I want the injector to pulse, that signal goes out. The time between that signal going out and the fuel flowing from the tip depends on a lot of things. It depends on the coil resistance in here. It depends on the pintle inside and the spring. There's a spring inside, and the fuel pressure. All those things stop the pintle from moving, so they add to dead time. Dead time is measured in milliseconds. Can we change it? I don't know in the factory Bosch ECU for the Maserati. So I went down a rabbit hole. This is the factory Maserati injector. It's found in a lot of other cars too. Shocker, I know. It's a Core 124. The other prefix is pretty much shared amongst all Bosch injectors that are modern. So I went digging around, and it turns out that this is a 123, and this is the next injector in series called a 124. And this injector comes off of a Porsche turbo. I can't remember. Porsche generic alphanumeric turbo, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, 650 cc injector. And you can see that they are identical. So you could plug this into your factory rail if you wanted to, and then plug your factory harness into it right here if you really wanted to. And you'll see that the tips are the identical length as well. So I guess what I'm saying is what Bosch does is they take a core, and then to change flow rates, if you didn't know this, if you don't know this, to change flow rates, you modify the screen tip on here. You'll see this little like brown copper ring around the holes right there. That is micro weld. And basically under this tip, it looks just like a pintle underneath there. These screens, so you can see this is a 12-hole screen, 12 small holes, and this is a 6-hole screen. So 6 large holes. And you can see on the Deca, they do the same thing. It's just one big hole, and it's tilted at an angle to give it the spray angle. So that's their strategy for spray angle. The 12 small holes and the 6 large holes are going to change the flow rate of the same core injector. So what I'm saying is these are the same injector. It's just that they micro welded on a different tip, a different screen on the end of the injector. And what aftermarket companies will do is they'll find cores from Bosch that they like, and they'll cut this off and modify the tip. It's called decapping. And I do it to mimic the aftermarket companies with the same injector data. So once I find out what core, let's say Injector Dynamics is using, or FIC, or any, you name it, big injector company, because they all do the same thing. Shocker, they don't make their own injectors. They find a core, and then they modify the tip, which is to say they cut this screen off to just expose the bare pintle on the end of the injector. And then they see what it flows and see how much they can get them for. ID1000s are a Bosch number 117. So this is a 123, that's a 124. ID1000s are a decapped 117. The 117 comes from Bosch as a 550cc injector. So it's not all that impressive actually. And then they decap them, and then they flow 1,000 cc's, which is almost double. So at any rate, Bosch does this with their own cores. So if you look, this is the core number sequence from Bosch. I just excerpt the one page because there's 300 pages. But 0280158 0280158 These are the two cores that we have here. And the 123 injector is a 613 cc at 300 kPa. That's what they test them at, and which is like 45 pounds. And the 124, which is the factory injector for the Maserati Granturismo, flows at 373 cc's. So them being one core number off, or one production part number off or separated, gives you pretty good confidence that they are the same injector. Why does that matter? Well, I'm going to put these in the machine and we'll see how much difference there is from a 700cc injector to a 615cc injector to a 370cc injector. And why that matters is that these dead times in the ECU should not have to be changed. Basically, you can control pulse width. That's we'll say a generic thing. The longer the pulse width, the more fuel you inject at a single time, at a single pulse. So, but how the dead times work is that delay that I was talking about earlier, from the time the ECU pulses until the time that the injector actually injects, right? And with these two injectors, those times are going to be identical. So then all you have to do to control fuel flow is pulse width, which is normal stuff that you have to be able to do with every tune. So let's go through some more injector data, and then we'll have a video on these two things, or these three in the machine. So I've got over here, as I'm rearranging my papers, I've got the 123 and the 124 injector data from Bosch, 627 cc's a minute, and this one's 381 cc's a minute. You can see it's a little bit different from the rated on their other sheet. It has all of the distances and measurements and core heights, 24 plus 53, so 24 tip with a 53. So that's the same. Jetronic connector, obviously we can see that that's the same. So these injectors, other than flow rate, are identical. And like I said, it is just the screen tip that they weld onto the end. This is a jet angle graph. And the way that you read this jet angle graph is you read the delta degrees, and then that's what your injector is. So on the injector data sheet, they'll say spray angle delta is 90 degrees. So you look over here, this is delta 90 degrees. So this is the spray angle of this injector right here. So as this injector sits like this, it sprays down at that. So that is the 123 injector, which is the 630cc injector, has a delta angle of 90 degrees, a spray angle of not 90 degrees, but what they're calling a delta of 90 degrees, okay? Don't think of it as a actual spray angle like this thing spraying at 90 degrees. It's more of a classification of the spray angle. The 124 injector also has a delta angle of 90 degrees. So you can see that these two are going to have, shocker I know, when you use the same core, you have the same spray angle. So we know that they work in the factory intake manifold. We know it's going to spray like the factory injector, and they have a split dual cone on both of the injectors. We'll talk about that now. So the split dual cone on these is the alpha angle here, 25 degrees of alpha angle. And that's on the 627cc. That is the only difference on these. The alpha angle on the factory Maserati one is 20 degrees. So that's the split of the spray that's coming out of the tip of the injector. That's not the angle at which the fuel is sprayed. That's the delta angle. It is the angle if you're looking this way at the injector and it's spraying out like this. It is the angle of that spray. And the reason that alpha angle, the spray angle like this, is different is because the 600cc injector is going to be spraying a lot more fuel. So those streams will interfere with each other if they don't spread them out a little bit more. It's not going to mean anything for atomization or anything like that. There is not even an alpha angle with this injector. It just sprays a single large stream. So it's not like that's a huge deal. I'm just providing the information, as it were. Okay, so now we're done with spray angles. We know that they're essentially the same on pretty much every avenue here. Now we have dead times. Oh, weird. Injection dead times or injection times at a certain pressure. As the pressure goes up, you can see that counteracts on the pintle getting pulled up. And as the bar of fuel pressure goes up, so does dead time, right? That makes sense. I kind of talked about that earlier, but now we have dead times and we have rated flows at higher pressures. So we can set a higher base pressure and know about what we're getting. We'll get 700 cc's at 4 bar of fuel pressure. So I can basically make that injector with something that has a very, very similar dead time to the factory Maserati injector. So this is the 123s and these are the 124s. Again, the 124s are the factory Maserati, the 123s are the 620, 30 cc, whatever it is. And they're bolding the 3.5 bar dead times right here. So if you look at 14 volts, because you have to look at what the car is going to be running on the alternator at, 0.496 on the 123s and 14 volts is 0.490 on dead times. Weird. So yeah, they're the same injector core. I'll get on to the part now. That's enough data and stuff about why I went to buy these and start using these now. Let's go to spray and we'll just throw them in the machine and we'll just test them and see how they do against each other. All right, we got the injectors that we care about plugged in. We've got the factory Maserati injector here, no red ring, and we have the 650cc injector here. Let's just see what they look like as far as spray pattern is concerned. So you can see that there's multiple holes. You know, with the 12-hole injector, you can see a lot more individual spray jets than with the 6 holes. They sort of combine into a wider jet fan, if you will, rather than individual streams. But you can see that the angle that I was talking about is a little bit wider, and than the factory Maserati one. All things said, that's pretty negligible as far as the injectors and how this is going to run in the car is concerned. It's actually really negligible. So as far as throwing these in, I think that as long as you can get some factory tuning done or factory ECU tuning done, you get to run these injectors with some nitrous, and there you go. That'd be great on the stock fuel system to get a little bit more out of it. We can run the 650s against the Mopar 700, and you can see the Mopar injector actually comes in at a harsher angle than the it almost looks straight from this angle, but if I turn it like this, you can see the angle that it actually sprays at. That 90-degree thing is almost straight on the angle, and if you take the Maserati ones, the granturismo ones, you can see they're the same angle. So they're all both pretty much straight. They're really, really straight as far as the spray angle is concerned. So they would basically plug into your intake manifold and your fuel rail and all that setup just as good as a factory injector would. I will do a flow test next and get a CC comparison out of these injectors, and we'll see how close we can get, because remember, Bosch is rating this injector at 3.5 bar. So and that's 600 some cc's, right? 630 cc's. I don't have DECA information on these. So what are they rating this injector at 700 cc's? Could it be 4 bar? Essentially, would these be the same injector, size-wise anyways? Different spray pattern and the rest, but you need a higher pressure to get 700 cc's. And I showed you on the other sheet, you raise the base pressure, you make the injectors larger. Other things that you could do is just take the factory injector and raise the base pressure. And there you go, you have a larger injector. If you wanted to do that, simply you could do that. I thought about doing that until I found these, basically. So anyways, I'm gonna do a flow test and we'll see what they come up with. All right, so we'll do, I think, 6 pulses. Maybe 8. So these are 1 second pulses at the same pressure. And we're just gonna, this is just raw flow. All right, so just like I theorized, and the reason why I theoried this about the Demon red-eye injectors is that I know what their base pressure is in the car. And I know that they PWM the pump up to like 70 or 80 PSI. So I know what they're doing with this injector. And if they PWM the pump down at low RPM, this injector gets smaller. If they PWM pulse width modulate the pump higher at higher boost levels and higher RPM, they make this injector larger because they run a higher pressure. So when you do that, you overcome the issue that I'm talking about, which is don't buy too large of an injector on this ECU, because the low end parameters, the minimum amount of milliseconds that you can hold this injector open in the ECUs is limited. If you make a smaller injector, this injector basically acts like these two. It acts like this at low fuel pump PWM, or pulse width modulation on the fuel pump. And it acts like this injector, obviously, because they flow the same. It acts like this injector at a high PWM, or pulse width modulation. You see what I'm saying? They run a higher base pressure to get 700 cc's. And they run a lower base pressure at lower RPM and low load situations. Long ways around. So this is actually at a normal pressure. This is actually a 650 cc injector, roughly. It is slightly more flow. You can see we got these are 2 ml differences here. So you got 70 to 4, so 74 mLs, and roughly 72 mLs. Really minutely difference between a 700 cc Demon red-eye injector, go look them up if you don't believe me, and a supposedly closer to 600 cc injector, when in actuality these are also 600 cc's if you keep them at one single pressure that is 45 psi, roughly 40 to 45 psi. You'll get 600 out of these. You need to run 50 to 55 psi to get 700 cc's, and you can do the same thing with that and not have to worry about the dead times in your factory Maserati ECU. Oh my gosh, take a breath. So the difference is, you can obviously tell, it's not really arguable. as far as the flow difference, we did 8 pulses on the factory Maserati Granturismo ECU, or injector. And, you know, we're right here, right around 46-ish. So yeah, you know, it's a roughly 40% difference. You could do that on paper. You could do that on, you know, we just saw it on the machine. You see it go on the machine. It's cool to, you know, actually see it play out in real life. I can back up the test with another setup, but, you know, we pretty much figured out what this injector is going. I think this injector is actually going to, you know, atomize better and all kinds of stuff, but we'll do 8 more pulses. There you go, we backed it up. All right, 8 full 1-second pulses on each injector, and we get, you know, right about where we were before, just barely touching the 74, if you want to call it, or if you really want to be accurate, it's a 72, and this is a 70. Either way, they're about 2 mLs off between the two. 2 mLs is within factory variants of the same size injector. So that is a factory flow matched injector set, flows within 2 mLs of each other. Essentially, it's the same flow, right? This is now a 700cc injector, same pressure that one's at. So, at any rate, you got about 70 again, or 72, whatever you want to call it. Just however you want to measure that. You know, if you want to be like a, you know, super science whiz, then it's at the bottom of the whatever this fucking curve of the fuel is called in the beaker. So it's at 70 and this is at 72. Either way, I measured it at the top and that was 72 and 74 again. And then this one also came in at 46. So that's telling me that, you know, what size these injectors are. Theorized that the Mopar injectors were just ran at higher pressures. So those 8 pulses on another Mopar injector or another Deca 700cc injector, and you can see it's flowing the same as the other Deca 700cc injector. Again, it's where they rate that pressure, right? It comes back to this sheet. Okay, so they're rating this injector 660 cc's at 3.5 bar. Again, if I go to 4 bar, that's a 710cc injector. Mopar runs these at 4 bar to get 700 cc's out of it, and they rate them at 4 bar. So instead of bolding this injector, which is where Bosch says this is where this injector flows, 660 cc's at 3.5 bar, Bosch and Mopar, Deca and Mopar are saying, no, this is a 700cc injector in this car that runs this base pressure, which is the only car that has that injector, is the Hellcat Red Eyes. So it's only rated at at this pressure and above, essentially, right? Anyways, long and short of injector stuff. I know this is kind of boring for some, but good information for others. You can see here that we would have to run 6 bar of fuel pressure to get 540 cc's or cm cube with the factory Granturismo injector. So this is the 124s right here, and it got cut off when I did this one. So this is the 123s injector data sheet. Hopefully this helps somebody with injector stuff. I'll be getting to the Maserati. I'm redoing the turbo kit on it. I know, super exciting, but I'm actually trying to get custom flanges made and all kinds of cool stuff. I did get a oilless turbo. I'll talk about that all in another video. The rails are done. This is my 450 that I'm going to use in the car. So that's what I'm going to be putting in the tank. And I can make another video on the fuel system when I get to making it, which shouldn't be too long from now. I have to take the tank out to be able to do that. But yeah, that's injector stuffs for Maseratis.